October 24th, 1942. Henderson Field, Guadalcanal. The dense jungle, which had been holding its breath in a deadly hush, suddenly erupted with the most blood-curdling sound a Marine could ever encounter. The guttural war cries of 800 Japanese soldiers screaming their death charge as they surged through the profound darkness. Gunnery Sergeant John Basilone found himself positioned defensively behind what his troops affectionately, or perhaps ironically, referred to as museum pieces, heavy, water-cooled machine guns dating back to the Great War. These formidable 100-pound iron armaments, considered technologically obsolete, had long since been superseded by more contemporary, lightweight designs. The cutting-edge 1919, for instance, boasted the capacity to unleash 1,000 rounds per minute, a weapon characterized by its rapid rate of fire, convenient portability, and modern engineering, embodying every attribute the Marine Corps desired for its engagements in the challenging jungle environment. Yet, as the relentless Banzai charge slammed into the American defensive lines, an utterly improbable phenomenon unfolded. The supposedly superior, newer machine guns abruptly ceased their operation, their barrels glowing a vivid cherry red, their intricate mechanisms seizing completely under the oppressive, humid, tropical heat. In stark contrast, the venerable M19-170A1s, with their cumbersome, bulky water jackets and a more deliberate cyclic rate of 600 rounds per minute, continued to discharge ammunition belt after belt, hour upon relentless hour, without faltering, without succumbing to overheating, and without displaying any trace of mercy. That fateful night, a staggering 800 enemy combatants would perish, felled by weapons the Marines had initially believed were impediments to their combat effectiveness. These seemingly antiquated machine guns, it turned out, concealed a vital operational secret that the modern military had inadvertently overlooked. The suffocatingly humid atmosphere of Guadalcanal clung to every surface and person like a sodden burial shroud, as Captain Roy Smith stood vigilantly at the periphery of Henderson Field, observing his Marines grappling with the formidable equipment they had been assigned. The M19-117A1 machine guns sat stoically in their prepared positions, appearing indeed like genuine relics from a bygone conflict, a grim reality Smith himself acknowledged. Each of these heavy weapons, when fully provisioned, tipped the scales at well over 100 pounds, its substantial water jacket reflecting the tropical sun with a dull, unpolished sheen. The intricate cooling system alone necessitated nearly a gallon of water, substantially augmenting the weight of an already unwieldy weapon that seemed unequivocally engineered for the static, entrenched battlefields of France, rather than the dynamic, mobile engagements characteristic of the Pacific theater. Stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Write a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. Captain Smith's mounting frustration had been steadily accumulating for several weeks. The more contemporary M19-19 machine guns represented everything the Marine Corps ostensibly sought in its quest for optimal jungle fighting capabilities. They were noticeably lighter, significantly more portable, and boasted an impressive maximum rate of fire of up to 1,000 rounds per minute, a considerable advantage over the M19-170's consistent 600. Furthermore, their innovative air-cooled system completely obviated the necessity for water, thereby drastically reducing both overall weight and operational complexity. On paper, these weapons appeared to be the quintessential instruments for rapid advances through the dense, unforgiving terrain, where every single ounce of equipment held critical importance. Yet, here they were, encumbered with firearms that, in Smith's estimation, genuinely belonged in a historical collection. His troops, the Marines, unequivocally shared his profound skepticism regarding their assigned weaponry. Private First Class Martinez, visibly straining, wrestled his M1917 into its designated firing position, muttering curses under his breath as the bulky tripod legs snagged persistently in the dense undergrowth. "Sergeant, this contraption weighs more than my girlfriend back home," he quipped, a remark that elicited scattered chuckles of recognition and commiseration from his squad mates. The comparison, in fact, was remarkably accurate. The M1917A1, complete with its tripod, water jacket, and a full load of ammunition, registered a hefty 103 pounds on the scales, whereas the sleek M1919 weighed in at a comparatively svelte 41 pounds. However, the sheer mass of the weapon constituted only one facet of the complex operational challenges. The intricate water-cooling system of the M1917A1 necessitated perpetual maintenance in the demanding field conditions. The water jackets required frequent refilling. All connections had to be meticulously inspected for any potential leaks, and the entire apparatus demanded exceptionally careful handling to prevent damage that could render it inoperable. In stark contrast, the M1919's air-cooling design afforded Marines the critical advantage of being able to rapidly relocate and reposition without the added concern of sloshing water or the complexities of a plumbing system. Both firearms discharged the identical 30-06 cartridge, but the M1919 accomplished this with what was perceived as superior modern efficiency. Smith systematically patrolled the defensive line, keenly observing his men's ongoing struggles with the decidedly antiquated weapons. While the Marine Corps had issued these particular guns for the crucial defense of Henderson Field, every contemporary tactical manual underscored the paramount importance of both mobility and concentrated firepower. The Japanese, renowned for their mastery of rapid infiltration tactics, expertly utilized the jungle's dense cover to swiftly close the distance before American forces could effectively react. Logically, therefore, it seemed that lighter, faster-firing weapons would undeniably provide his Marines with the decisive advantage they so desperately required. The precise technical specifications painted a remarkably clear picture. The M1919 possessed the capability to sustain impressive rates of fire, approaching 1,000 rounds per minute in controlled short bursts, a figure that was nearly double the M1917's consistent rate of 600 rounds per minute. For a defensive posture anticipating overwhelming human wave assaults, this additional concentrated firepower appeared absolutely indispensable. Its air-cooled barrel could theoretically endure prolonged firing, provided that the crews meticulously observed brief cooling intervals between sustained bursts. Yet, a persistent unease nagged at Smith as he observed his gunners undergoing their training. The M1917's bulky water jacket, he began to realize, was far from being merely superfluous dead weight. It functioned as an exceptionally efficient heat sink, absorbing and dissipating thermal energy with a ruthless effectiveness that belied its age. The newer M1919 guns relied fundamentally on air circulation around their barrels, a system that proved highly effective in temperate climates, but demonstrably faltered under the suffocating humidity endemic to the South Pacific. Amidst conditions of 90% humidity, and ambient temperatures consistently pushing 90 degrees Fahrenheit, the efficiency of air cooling plummeted with each incremental degree of barrel heat. Furthermore, the ammunition requirements and feeding mechanisms also displayed significant differences. While both weapons utilized the same 30-06 cartridges, their respective feeding systems operated distinctly. The M1917 employed continuous ammunition belts that could be readily linked together for truly sustained, uninterrupted fire, whereas the M1919 relied on shorter belts, necessitating more frequent and potentially dangerous reloading during an extended engagement. In a prolonged firefight, those precious extra seconds spent changing belts could prove irrevocably fatal. Captain Smith's lingering doubts coalesced into undeniable certainty during an intense training exercise conducted just 3 days prior to the impending Japanese assault. His gunners had been rigorously practicing sustained fire drills, expending belt after belt of ammunition to meticulously simulate the kind of defensive barrage that would be absolutely essential against a ferocious Banzai charge. Initially, the M1919s performed admirably for the first few minutes, their superior rate of fire tearing through targets with impressive, almost surgical speed. However, as the exercise progressed, inherent problems rapidly surfaced. The air-cooled barrels began to visibly glow, initially a dull, ominous red, then progressively brighter as the metal absorbed far more heat than the humid ambient air could possibly dissipate. Gunners were repeatedly compelled to cease fire, waiting precious minutes for the barrels to cool sufficiently to resume their engagement. Meanwhile, the robust M1917s maintained their unwavering, steady output of 600 rounds per minute, without any interruption whatsoever. Their massive water jackets efficiently absorbed the intense heat, converting it into steam that safely vented away from the delicate mechanisms. By the conclusion of the demanding exercise, the newer M1919 guns, despite their theoretically higher cyclic rate, had fired fewer total rounds, having been repeatedly forced into silence by their own inability to manage heat generation. In stark contrast, the older, more resilient weapons had sustained consistent, uninterrupted fire throughout the entirety of the drill, their barrels remaining sufficiently cool to handle even after thousands of rounds had passed through their chambers. Captain Smith, despite the meticulous preparation and rigorous drills, found himself grappling with a profound sense of apprehension. Training exercises, while vital for instilling discipline and skill, could never fully replicate the chaotic and unpredictable nature of actual combat. The Imperial Japanese forces, renowned for their fanatical devotion and particularly for their ferocious night attacks, often employed overwhelming human wave tactics, relying on sheer shock and blistering speed to breach and overrun enemy strongholds. A critical question gnawed at him. Would the M1917's steady, continuous stream of fire prove sufficient to repel hundreds of screaming adversaries intent on closing the distance? Or would the M1919's higher, more rapid bursts of lead be absolutely necessary to decimate the attackers before they could reach their positions? This tactical dilemma weighed heavily on his mind, underscoring the stark reality that the battlefield would soon provide an definitive and potentially deadly answer. His Marines, demonstrating their characteristic military precision, continued their arduous preparations, yet Smith could discern an underlying current of doubt reflected in their weary eyes. While they placed immense faith in their extensive training and their assigned weaponry, These particular machine guns, the M1917 and M1919, felt to many like cumbersome relics, tethering them to a bygone era. Across the vast Pacific theater, nearly every other Allied unit appeared to be transitioning towards lighter, more advanced, and technologically superior equipment. Yet here they were, isolated and defending a vital airstrip in a remote, nondescript location, saddled with armaments that seemed more suited to the muddy trenches of Below Wood than the tropical jungles of the Solomons. The bitter irony was not lost on Smith. The very firearms instrumental in securing victory during the Great War were now widely perceived as antiquated, ill-suited for the dynamic demands of modern warfare. Nevertheless, as he observed his dedicated gunners meticulously mastering the intricate quirks and formidable capabilities of the M1917, a nascent thought began to form. Perhaps the Marine Corps, in its seemingly anachronistic equipment choices, possessed a deeper strategic insight that eluded immediate comprehension. Could there be genuine wisdom in selecting tools based on the specific, unforgiving requirements of a mission, rather than merely adhering to the prevailing winds of technological fashion? In precisely 72 hours, when the verdant jungle would inevitably erupt in a symphony of screams and gunfire, that profound wisdom would face its ultimate, most unforgiving examination. We invite you to stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Please leave a comment below about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. The night of October 24th descended with an palpable sense of foreboding, carrying the grim promise of death across the tranquil waters of the Ilu River. Colonel Kiyonao Ichiki's voice, sharp and resolute, pierced the dense darkness as he delivered his final, impassioned address to his assault troops, 800 determined men of the 28th Infantry Regiment, each utterly convinced that the American Marines would inevitably crumble and shatter before the unyielding might of the Emperor's steel. His meticulously crafted plan was remarkably elegant in its brutal simplicity, a direct, frontal assault launched across the sandy expanse at the river's mouth, designed to utterly overwhelm the thin American defensive line through a combination of sheer audacity and an indomitable fighting spirit. The American forces, he confidently assured his assembled officers, had simply never before encountered, nor could they possibly withstand, the unbridled fury of a true Banzai charge. Captain Smith, his muscles tensed, crouched low behind the fortified, sandbagged position where the formidable gunnery sergeant Basilone had expertly sighted his M1917A1 machine gun. The weapon's water jacket, still emitting a faint warmth, served as a testament to the thoroughness of the afternoon's final function checks. This particular machine gun commanded an absolutely flawless field of fire, sweeping across the narrow, critical stretch of beach where the river converged with the vast sea, its sturdy tripod legs driven deep into the unyielding coral sand. Basilone, a master of his craft, had dedicated countless hours to meticulously adjusting the gun's traverse and elevation, carefully marking crucial reference points with small, white-painted stakes that glimmered faintly, almost ethereally, in the sparse starlight. The weapon's intricate ammunition belts, laden with 250 rounds linked together, snaked through the defensive position like metallic intestines, poised and ready to feed into the hungry chamber of the M1917A1. The long-anticipated attack commenced precisely at 0310, heralded by a chilling guttural sound that caused every hair on Smith's neck to stand on end. 800 voices, screaming in a terrifying, synchronized unison as Japanese soldiers surged relentlessly across the sandbar. They advanced in relentless, successive waves, bayonets rigidly fixed to their rifles, held high in anticipation, their faces contorted with an almost fanatic, unyielding determination. The leading ranks splashed violently through the shallow, churning water, while countless others pressed relentlessly behind them, forming a veritable human tsunami that, under the eerie glow of the moonlight, appeared utterly unstoppable and inexorable. Smith's M1919 gunners were the first to unleash their devastating firepower, their weapons chattering with a furious intensity, spitting lead at an astonishing rate of nearly 1,000 rounds per minute as they poured a deadly torrent into the charging mass. The immediate effect was absolutely devastating. Bodies crumpled and fell lifeless, their blood rapidly darkening the pristine sand as the high-velocity rounds tore mercilessly through flesh and bone. For a few precious, fleeting seconds, it seemed as though these modern, rapid-fire guns would unequivocally vindicate every tactical manual ever written about the efficacy of swift, overwhelming defensive fire. However, the oppressive jungle heat had been steadily accumulating within those air-cooled barrels throughout the entire day. And now, the sustained, intense firing pushed the metal temperatures far beyond their critical limits, signaling an impending crisis. The first M19T19 machine gun abruptly fell silent after a mere 90 seconds of continuous operation, its barrel glowing a vivid cherry red in the enveloping darkness, as the gunner frantically signaled for an urgent barrel change. Another M19E19 followed suit a mere 30 seconds later, then a third, their complex mechanisms seizing completely, as extreme thermal expansion irrevocably locked their crucial moving parts in place. In stark contrast, Barcelone's M1917A1 had settled into its own steady, unwavering rhythm, a consistent 600 rounds per minute, as precise and unyielding as a metronome. Its efficient water jacket meticulously absorbed the immense heat generated by the sustained firing, converting it into steam that hissed softly, almost imperceptibly, into the humid night air. Smith watched, utterly transfixed, as the older, seemingly antiquated gun maintained its relentless rate of fire, without the slightest pause, each round precisely and lethally placed into the predetermined killing zone that Bazzaloni had meticulously marked during his daylight reconnaissance. Despite the horrific carnage unfolding before them, the Japanese soldiers continued their unwavering advance, their rigorous training and ingrained discipline overriding any natural survival instincts, as they stepped over the fallen bodies of their comrades and pressed relentlessly forward. Smith could now discern individual faces in the dim light, their eyes wide with a ferocious battle fury, their mouths agape in primal screams that eerily mingled with the steady, rhythmic hammering of the machine gun. Some of these fanatical attackers carried crude explosive charges strapped to their bodies, demonstrating an absolute willingness to die if only they could reach and breach the American positions. The M1919s eventually struggled back into sporadic action, as their crews completed hurried, desperate barrel changes. But the critical interruptions in their covering fire had allowed the Japanese assault to gain dangerous momentum. Japanese soldiers, driven by an unyielding resolve, had already reached the outer wire obstacles, efficiently cutting through the defensive barriers with specialized wire cutters, and, in some cases, even their bare hands. The gaps and silences in the previously continuous wall of lead had proven incredibly costly. What should have been an impenetrable, continuous barrier of defensive fire had unfortunately devolved into fragmented, sporadic bursts, separated by crucial and perilous silences. However, the M19-117A1, a steadfast sentinel of destruction, never faltered. Basilone, with movements born of practiced perfection, fed belt after belt into the weapon's hungry action. His actions smooth and unhurried despite the unmitigated chaos erupting all around him. The ingenious water-cooled system had transformed the gun into an indefatigable engine of destruction, functioning flawlessly regardless of the sheer volume of rounds passing through its barrel. Steam rose steadily from the water jacket, creating an almost ethereal plume, like incense ascending from some mechanical altar. Yet the gun's intricate mechanism remained remarkably cool and operated with chilling precision. Smith found himself utterly mesmerized by the weapon's relentless, almost hypnotic efficiency. Each burst of fire lasted for precisely the same duration. Each brief pause required for a belt change took exactly the same amount of time. Each minute correction of fire followed the same deliberate, methodical process. The M19-117A1 had in essence become an organic extension of Basilone's unwavering will, responding with uncanny accuracy to his slightest adjustment, yet simultaneously operating independently of human limitations such as debilitating fatigue or the cumulative effects of intense heat buildup. As bodies continued to pile up in the designated killing zone, the relentless Japanese charge finally began to falter, its momentum irretrievably broken. The surviving attackers found themselves in an impossible predicament, effectively trapped between the impassable river behind them and the unceasing, devastating fire emanating from the M19-17A1 directly ahead. Some desperate individuals attempted to outflank the formidable position by moving cautiously along the beach. But Basilone, anticipating their moves, simply traversed the gun left and right with practiced ease, his meticulously pre-marked reference points allowing him to maintain incredibly accurate and lethal fire, even in the profound darkness of the night. The battle raged through the night, shrouded in complete darkness. As the first rays of dawn pierced the gloom, the sandbar lay strewn with the lifeless forms of nearly 800 Japanese soldiers, their fervent belief in spiritual superiority ultimately proving no match for the overwhelming force of American weaponry. Amidst this grim tableau, the venerable M19-117A1 machine gun finally fell silent, its water jacket radiating residual warmth. Yet its intricate mechanism remained poised and prepared for any further engagement that might arise. In stark contrast, the more contemporary M1919 machine guns surrounding it bore undeniable evidence of their severe thermal ordeal. Their barrels were marred by distinct discoloration from the intense heat, with several even warped beyond any hope of repair, testament to the extreme conditions they had endured. Captain Smith, a figure of quiet contemplation, moved deliberately among his dedicated gunners, observing them as they meticulously cleaned their formidable weapons and diligently tallied the consumption of ordnance. The raw statistics emerging from this grim accounting unveiled a narrative that transcended anything outlined in conventional training manuals. Astonishingly, the M19-117A1 had discharged in excess of 4,000 rounds throughout the protracted engagement, achieving this feat without a solitary operational malfunction. Its robust water-cooled system had steadfastly maintained unwavering operational integrity from the initial volley to the final cessation of hostilities. Conversely, the M1919s, despite possessing a theoretically superior cyclic rate, had collectively fired a significantly lesser volume of ammunition, compelled into repeated periods of silence by incessant overheating that critically left perilous gaps in the defensive curtain. The ramifications of these findings for tactical doctrine were profoundly impactful, causing a re-evaluation of established beliefs. In the unforgiving crucible of jungle warfare, where the relentless onslaught of humidity and heat constituted perpetual adversaries, the antiquated weapon's sophisticated cooling system furnished a critical superiority that contemporary technological advancements had, quite unwittingly, overlooked. The M1919's reliance on air cooling, while perfectly adequate and efficient in the more moderate climes, proved woefully insufficient and struggled immensely within the sultry, debilitating conditions prevalent in the South Pacific. Paradoxically, the very attributes of considerable weight and perceived complexity, which had contributed to the M1917A1 being deemed obsolete, had now demonstrably emerged as formidable strengths, precisely when the exigencies of the mission mandated prolonged and sustained firepower. Stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Write a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. Sergeant Basilone, a figure of exhaustion and triumph, emerged from his defensive emplacement as if from a deep stupor, his uniform thoroughly saturated with both his own perspiration and the telltale condensation emanating from the weapon's steam vents. For a grueling 6-hour period, he had been inextricably linked to the machine gun, continuously feeding ammunition belts into its ravenous action, simultaneously executing subtle calibrations to preserve accuracy as enemy targets dynamically shifted and maneuvered across the field. In this crucible of combat, the formidable weapon had seemingly become an extension of his own being. Its rhythmic cadence mirrored his very heartbeat, and its operational requirements were instinctively anticipated even before they fully manifested. As the sun ascended further, illuminating the full, undeniable scope of their hard-won victory, Captain Smith felt his lingering skepticism gradually dissipate, giving way to an emotion bordering on profound admiration. These venerable museum pieces had unequivocally demonstrated their intrinsic value in the most arduous trial imaginable, not only enduring but decisively outperforming their supposedly superior modern counterparts, precisely when the stakes were highest. The unforgiving jungle environment had, with brutal clarity, unveiled a fundamental truth that strategic foresight in times of peace had regrettably overlooked. Occasionally, the most ancient and seemingly outmoded solution proves itself unequivocally to be the most efficacious. The profound transformation in military doctrine commenced in the immediate hours succeeding the Tenarue massacre, as news of the M1917A1's exemplary performance propagated through the Marine Corps chain of command with astonishing rapidity, akin to an uncontrolled conflagration. Captain Smith, a central figure in these revelations, soon found himself summoned to division headquarters merely 3 days post-battle. There, Major General Alexander Vandegrift awaited his arrival, flanked by a substantial stack of meticulously compiled after-action reports, and poised to ask a pivotal question, one that would ultimately fundamentally alter strategic approaches across the entire Pacific theater. The commanding general's countenance, etched with the weariness inherent in the relentless defense of Henderson Field, nonetheless revealed eyes that gleamed with a sharp, incisive intelligence, a quality that had proven instrumental in preserving the lives of his Marines through many months of desperate and unrelenting combat. General Vandegrift meticulously arrayed the detailed engagement reports across his improvised desk, his finger deliberately tracing the ammunition expenditure figures that collectively recounted a truly remarkable narrative. The emplacements fortified with the M19-117A1 had sustained an unbroken barrage of fire for an astonishing duration exceeding 6 hours, expending in excess of 20,000 rounds without experiencing a solitary weapon failure. Concurrently, those positions outfitted with the M19-119s had endured numerous barrel replacements and protracted cooling intervals, inevitably creating perilous vulnerabilities within the defensive perimeter. While the more recent models were capable of delivering impressive bursts of fire, they conspicuously lacked the endurance to sustain the kind of protracted combat operations that the demanding environment of jungle warfare intrinsically required. Captain Smith observed intently as Vandegrift's finger moved across the casualty figures, specifically highlighting how enemy attrition statistics demonstrated that the fallen concentrated most densely in front of the water-cooled positions. The M19-117A1's unwavering rate of 600 rounds per minute had effectively forged killing zones that remained unswervingly deadly throughout the entirety of the engagement. In sharp contrast, the M19-119's theoretically superior cyclic rate had proven utterly meaningless when its inherent overheating constraints necessitated frequent and unavoidable ceasefires. The general's uncompromising verdict was undeniably stark. In their relentless pursuit of modernization, the Marine Corps had demonstrably been misguided in their selection and prioritization of technical specifications. Within a mere 48-hour period, pressing directives and urgent communications commenced their flow back to Marine Corps headquarters situated in Quantico, explicitly requesting the immediate redistribution of M19-17A1 machine guns to all frontline units. This very weapon, which had previously been consigned to instructional capacities and the less demanding tasks of rear area security, abruptly transformed into the singularly most coveted item within the entire Pacific supply chain. Ordnance officers, responding with alacrity, hastily sought out stored guns and expedited their shipment to the forward operating areas, while dedicated armorers labored around the clock to meticulously refurbish and restore weapons that had been lying dormant and gathering dust in various stateside warehouses. The comprehensive engineering reassessment, however, transcended the mere tabulation of ammunition expenditures. Marine engineers embarked upon an in-depth thermodynamic scrutiny of both weapon systems, meticulously conducted under simulated combat conditions. This involved precise measurements of barrel temperatures and intricate calculations of heat dissipation rates, specifically within tropical environments. Their scientific findings unequivocally corroborated what Sergeant Bassalone and his fellow gunners had already ascertained through harsh, empirical observation. The efficacy of air cooling became markedly diminished in efficiency, as both the ambient temperature and atmospheric humidity steadily escalated. Specifically, in Guadalcanal's characteristic conditions of 90° Fahrenheit and 90% humidity, the M19-119's cooling capacity experienced a precipitous decline of nearly 40%, when compared to its performance under more temperate climatic conditions. Conversely, the M1917A1's water jacket consistently upheld an uninterrupted thermal regulation, demonstrating its robust cooling performance irrespective of the prevailing atmospheric conditions. The inherent heat sink of the system efficiently absorbed thermal energy, subsequently converting it into steam, thereby establishing a continuous cooling cycle that operated entirely independently of ambient air temperature or humidity levels. Thus, the perceived weight penalty, which had previously contributed to the weapon's classification as obsolete, was, in actual fact, a reservoir of stored cooling capacity, an invaluable attribute that yielded substantial benefits during prolonged and intense engagements. Captain Smith, now an ardent proponent, swiftly assumed the role of an unofficial evangelist for the venerable weapon, diligently educating recently deployed formations on the crucial lessons gleaned from the brutal engagement at Tanaru. He underscored the imperative that the M1917A1 necessitated distinct tactical approaches compared to its more modern counterparts. Crews were required to adopt a mindset focused on continuous suppressive barrages rather than fleeting rapid bursts, and the strategic positioning of the weapon became paramount, given its substantial weight, rendered rapid repositioning a considerable challenge. However, when deployed with appropriate expertise and forethought, it possessed the unparalleled capacity to deliver a volume of sustained firepower that lighter, more contemporary weapons simply could not emulate in the punishing conditions of the jungle. The profound validation of the M1917A1's efficacy transcended mere individual battles, as consecutive confrontations consistently reaffirmed this emerging pattern of superior performance. During the pivotal October offensive, when General Harukichi Hyakutake committed the entirety of his 17th Army to a concerted offensive against the critical Henderson Field, the emplacements armed with M1917A1s once more demonstrated their decisive strategic importance. The Japanese forces launched regiment after regiment against the tenacious Marine lines, anticipating that the American defenses would eventually yield to relentless attrition under such sustained pressure. Instead, they were met with an unremitting torrent of machine gun fire that remained unyielding, never pausing for prolonged cooling periods, and crucially, never creating the exploitable gaps that their assault troops desperately sought. Gunnery Sergeant Mitchell Page strikingly demonstrated this novel tactical methodology amidst the fierce engagements of October 26th, when his defensive post came under a ferocious, overwhelming assault. He adeptly utilized the M1917A1's remarkable capacity for sustained fire, thereby single-handedly defending a vital segment of the perimeter, while lighter, air-cooled armaments would have necessitated repeated pauses for their barrels to cool. The M1917A1, with its innovative water cooling system, empowered him to perpetuate an unbroken stream of bullets even when fighting in complete isolation. His official Medal of Honor commendation would later explicitly highlight the weapon's exceptional dependability under such arduous and extreme combat conditions. The repercussions for supply chains and strategic planning resonated throughout the vast expanse of the Pacific Theater, as senior officers began to specifically request M1917A1s for static, defensive emplacements, while simultaneously reserving the more modern 1919s for fluid, mobile operations. The heavier, water-cooled machine guns proved perfectly suited for fixed fortifications, such as bunkers and strongpoints, where their substantial mass presented no impediment to their effectiveness. Conversely, the lighter M19-9s remained more appropriate for advancing forces that prioritized maneuverability and ease of transport over the capacity for continuous, prolonged output. This judicious deployment strategy effectively optimized each weapon's inherent advantages, while concurrently mitigating their respective drawbacks. Consequently, instructional methodologies and training protocols underwent significant adaptation to integrate the M9917A1's distinctive operational requirements. Gunner schools, for instance, placed significant importance on meticulous water management, diligently instructing crews to constantly observe the jacket levels and to ensure the functionality of steam vents, even amidst the most intense combat scenarios. The creation and understanding of detailed range cards became increasingly vital, as the weapon's considerable weight rendered swift engagement of targets challenging. However, its consistent precision made careful, pre-planned fire exceptionally destructive. Furthermore, ordnance management protocols adjusted to accommodate the extended ammunition feeds that the water-cooled system could reliably facilitate, allowing for longer periods of uninterrupted firing. Stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Write a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. Captain Smith, a key figure in this evolving doctrine, found himself tasked with formulating fresh operational guidelines that comprehensively integrated the insights gained from the fierce engagements on Guadalcanal. The instructional guide he authored underscored various environmental factors that pre-war evaluations had regrettably overlooked. Specifically, how atmospheric humidity impacted the efficiency of air-based cooling systems, how continuous firing capacities varied significantly from theoretical maximum, cyclic rates, and how heat-related constraints could generate unforeseen tactical weaknesses. This pivotal document subsequently became mandatory study material for machine gun crews across the entire Pacific, thereby disseminating Guadalcanal's invaluable hard-won wisdom to formations confronting comparable and equally challenging environmental conditions. The alteration in viewpoint regarding these weapons was perhaps most strikingly evident within the Marines themselves. Armaments that had once been perceived as burdensome tasks, often assigned as a form of punishment, rapidly transitioned into highly sought-after roles, as intelligence circulated about their undeniable combat efficacy. Seasoned combatants, veterans of the Tenarú River engagement and later confrontations, articulated profound respect and even reverence for these particular guns, which had steadfastly maintained their output when all other armaments fell silent. Thus, the M1917A1, in the course of several critical and desperate nights, transitioned from an antiquated relic, almost a museum piece, to a crucial instrument of survival and a veritable lifesaver. By the close of December 1942, as Australian forces took over from the Marine contingent on Guadalcanal, the crucial insight had solidified into official military policy. The most venerable automatic weapon within the U.S. arsenal had unequivocally demonstrated its preeminence over its more contemporary counterpart under specific operational circumstances. This unexpected revelation served to instruct strategic architects that technological advancement did not invariably equate to an enhancement in tactical capability. Occasionally, the most suitable instrument for a particular task was the one that appeared most anachronistic. its value corroborated not by theoretical metrics or specifications on paper, but rather by its proven efficacy amidst the crucible of actual combat. The M1917A1's resurgence signified something deeper than mere reallocation of material. It epitomized a profound change in how the Marine Corps considered the integration of new armaments and approached technology adoption. Novelty, it became clear, did not automatically confer superiority if the weapon failed to execute the designated mission under battlefield duress. Substantial mass, once deemed a perpetual impediment, was not always a disadvantage if it offered indispensable functionalities like sustained fire. Furthermore, intricacy did not innately surpass straightforwardness, particularly if combat environments prioritized sturdy dependability and robust reliability above elaborate, sophisticated features. These fundamental insights would profoundly shape the evolution of American infantry weapons development for many subsequent decades. The ultimate justification and vindication of the M1917A1 found its zenith on Iwo Jima, where the legendary John Basilone would carry the wisdom gained from Guadalcanal into his ultimate engagement. By early February 1945, Gunnery Sergeant Basilone had ascended to become the Marine Corps' most renowned automatic weapons operator, his Medal of Honor citation expressly attributing the success of securing the vital Henderson Field to the water-cooled weapon. However, his widespread renown had drawn him from the active combat zones. Initially deployed on domestic war bond drives, where his valorous persona could galvanize public backing for the Pacific Campaign, Basilone's re-entry into active fighting was entirely at his personal behest. Despite numerous proposals for less perilous postings that would have ensured his survival throughout the conflict's duration, he grasped an insight that strategic planners behind the lines often overlooked. The M1917A1's operational transformation was incomplete without experienced gunners who could fully leverage its complete capabilities. While the revival of the armament had furnished the necessary hardware, true combat proficiency resided predominantly in veterans who had acquired its operational nuances through dire exigency rather than through theoretical peacetime instruction. The dark, sulfurous, volcanic terrain of the island introduced novel obstacles that put to the ultimate trial every piece of knowledge acquired in the verdant, tropical environments of Guadalcanal. In stark contrast to the coral-strewn shores and thick foliage characteristic of the Solomon Islands, Iwo Jima provided scant inherent concealment and, crucially, a complete absence of natural water supplies for the M1917A1's crucial water cooling mechanism. The Imperial Japanese forces had dedicated many months to constructing intricate subterranean passages and fortified strongpoints, designed to endure extended artillery barrages, thereby fashioning a deadly arena where each meter of advance would necessitate a profound sacrifice of American lives. Captain Smith, having received a promotion and now tasked with orchestrating the deployment of automatic weapons within the 5th Marine Division, collaborated closely with Basilone to modify the operational methods for water-cooled armaments to suit this novel operational setting. The lack of indigenous water supplies necessitated that gun teams transport supplementary provisions, or in dire circumstances, depend upon saline water retrieved directly from the ocean, thereby mandating significant alterations to established operational protocols. While the rugged volcanic landscape offered superb vantage points for engagement, it afforded minimal cover from incoming Japanese ordnance and indirect fire, which could precisely aim at fixed emplacements with ruinous precision. Bassilone's profound knowledge demonstrated its immense worth during the preliminary strategic development stage, as he pinpointed locales where the M19-117A1's capacity for prolonged suppressive fire could assert control over crucial geographical points. The armament's substantial mass, which had remained a hindrance during swift offensive movements, transformed into an asset when establishing static emplacements that required the ability to repel fierce enemy thrusts. The Japanese strategic approach on Iwo Jima heavily depended upon clandestine nocturnal incursions and abrupt attacks launched from hidden locations, precisely the scenario where an uninterrupted torrent of bullets proved to be the determining factor. The sheer magnitude of the weapon's destructive capability ultimately proved to be the pivotal factor in many engagements. The amphibious assault on February 19th served as a profound testament to the Marine Corps' complete and decisive adoption of the water-cooled machine gun's strategic importance. M1917A1 heavy machine guns were among the very first armaments to hit the beaches, their dedicated crews having undergone rigorous training specifically in rapid deployment techniques designed to establish formidable defensive perimeters mere moments after disembarking. The inherent capacity of these firearms to deliver an unrelenting barrage of sustained fire became absolutely indispensable as entrenched Japanese defenders materialized from their intricately camouflaged positions, fiercely contesting every single disembarkation point along the coastline. The climactic confrontation involving Gunnery Sergeant John Bassilone on February 21st starkly underscored the M1917A1's remarkable transformation from an overlooked, seemingly obsolete artifact into an indispensable instrument of warfare. As he spearheaded a specialized machine gun section towards the strategically vital Motoyama Airfield No. 1, Bassilone encountered a formidable network of Japanese bunkers. These fortifications were ingeniously situated to command all access routes to the crucial airstrip. This particular tactical scenario demanded precisely the kind of prolonged, continuous, suppressive fire that had initially propelled the water-cooled gun to prominence during the ferocious battles on Guadalcanal. But now, with critical enhancements and refinements, forged over 3 arduous years of intense combat across the Pacific theater. The engagement commenced at the break of dawn, with Bassilone's section meticulously positioning themselves to gain an advantageous vantage point overlooking the Japanese stronghold. The M1917A1s initiated their assault with synchronized, coordinated bursts, their overlapping arcs of fire weaving an impenetrable barrier of projectiles that effectively stifled any enemy movement between their fortified positions. In stark contrast to the chaotic, visceral close quarters fighting witnessed at Tanaru, this particular confrontation necessitated an extraordinary degree of precision fire delivered over extended ranges, where the weapon's intrinsic accuracy proved every bit as invaluable as its capacity for sustained, relentless fusillades. The Japanese defenders retaliated with a relentless barrage of mortar and artillery fire, compelling the machine gun crews to constantly shift their positions, a grueling test of their ability to maintain uninterrupted fire amidst the deafening bombardment. While the substantial heft of the M1917A1 rendered swift repositioning a considerable challenge, its advanced water cooling system empowered its crews to sustain rates of fire that lighter, air-cooled weapons simply could not emulate. Bassilone, with unwavering resolve, moved ceaselessly between the various gun emplacements, meticulously coordinating their fire and ensuring the timely resupply of ammunition, all while personally directing the intricate tactical deployment that had become his signature expertise. The profound tactical sophistication so brilliantly exhibited at Iwo Jima represented the pinnacle of hard-won lessons accumulated throughout the arduous Pacific campaign. The dedicated gun crews had achieved masterful proficiency in water management techniques, ensuring optimal cooling efficiency even when compelled to utilize improvised saltwater substitutes. Ammunition handling procedures had undergone significant evolution to accommodate belt lengths exceeding 1,000 rounds, thereby enabling sustained firing periods that could endure for hours without interruption. Furthermore, the critical skills of range estimation and target acquisition had been refined into precise sciences, maximizing the weapon's inherent accuracy. Perhaps even more significantly, the M1917A1 had finally discovered its perfectly suited tactical niche within the Marine Corps' comprehensive combined arms doctrine. Rather than attempting to force the weapon into a role it was fundamentally unsuited for, such as a lightweight, highly portable gun for rapid offensive maneuvers, the Marines had judiciously learned to deploy it in scenarios where its unique strengths provided the utmost strategic advantage. Fixed defensive positions, missions requiring prolonged suppressive fire, and engagements demanding long-range precision had definitively become the specialized domains of the venerable water-cooled gun. Stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Write a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. The formidable psychological impact exerted by the weapon on enemy forces had also emerged as a significant consideration in meticulous tactical planning. Japanese troops had developed a deep-seated dread of the unmistakable resonant sound of sustained M1917A1 fire, instinctively recognizing it as a relentless and unyielding threat that would neither diminish over time nor be affected by ambient temperature. The gun's unparalleled capacity to maintain continuous fire established an imposing psychological barrier, effectively complementing its devastating physical effects and compelling enemy units to remain rigidly concealed rather than daring to attempt movement under its relentless barrage. Basilone's tragic demise during the brutal Iwo Jima assault undeniably signaled the conclusion of a distinct era, yet his profound tactical legacy persevered, indelibly etched into the operational doctrine he had been instrumental in developing. The M1917A1 continued its invaluable service throughout the entirety of the Pacific Campaign. Its strategic role firmly secured, as commanders finally grasped the crucial distinction between mere technological sophistication and tangible battlefield effectiveness. The weapon that had been largely dismissed as obsolete in 1941 had, by 1945, become absolutely indispensable. The broader ramifications of this experience extended far beyond individual weapon systems, profoundly influencing American military philosophy concerning technology adoption. The remarkable resurgence of the M1917A1 vividly demonstrated that the demanding requirements of combat often diverged significantly from peacetime specifications, that environmental variables could decisively override theoretical advantages, and that the invaluable insights gleaned from the experience of combat veterans offered a depth of understanding that sterile laboratory testing simply could not replicate. These hard-won lessons would fundamentally reshape the military's approach to evaluating new equipment, placing a paramount emphasis on proven real-world performance over abstract theoretical capabilities. By the conclusion of the war, the M1917A1 had achieved something truly extraordinary. It had successfully vindicated its enduring relevance against a tide of newer, more advanced technology by unequivocally demonstrating superior performance under specific, arduous conditions. The weapon's inherent weight and complexity, initially perceived as significant disadvantages, had unexpectedly proven to be integral features that enabled capabilities lighter weapons were utterly incapable of matching. In environments where sustained, continuous fire was of paramount importance, the water cooling system had unequivocally triumphed over less efficient air cooling designs, proving its mettle where it mattered most. The profound tactical revolution ignited by the desperate and brutal fighting on Guadalcanal fundamentally transformed the Marine Corps' foundational thinking regarding firepower, sustainability, and adaptability to diverse environmental challenges. An initially obsolete weapon had, against all odds, imparted crucial modern lessons about the intricate relationship between technology and tactics, unequivocally proving that sometimes the most effective solution was indeed the oldest one, meticulously refined through extensive experience and rigorously validated by tangible results rather than mere theoretical specifications. The ultimate chapter of the M1917A1's storied Pacific War began with a pervasive silence, the kind of profound and heavy quiet that inevitably descends after the cessation of prolonged and intense combat. Captain Smith stood amidst the desolate ruins of what had once been the majestic Shuri Castle on Okinawa, observing his weary Marines meticulously cleaning their weapons for what many fervently hoped would be the very last time. The water-cooled machine guns remained steadfast in their emplacements, stoic sentinels that had borne witness to an unimaginable scale of conflict, their distinctive cooling jackets still radiating a faint warmth from the final, decisive engagement that had ultimately shattered the last vestiges of organized Japanese resistance across the island's southern approaches. The stark statistics emanating from the Okinawa campaign narrated a compelling story that would have seemed utterly inconceivable just 3 years prior, amidst the desperate struggles on Guadalcanal. M1917A1 positions had consistently maintained an impressive average operational uptime of 96% throughout sustained engagements, a stark contrast to the mere 72% achieved by air-cooled weapons under comparable conditions. This significant disparity translated directly into thousands of additional rounds that reached their intended targets instead of languishing in overheated chambers, a relentless outpouring of firepower that had proven absolutely decisive in systematically dismantling Japanese defensive positions that had, for weeks, withstood an unrelenting bombardment. Weeks of relentless bombardment. Smith found himself deeply contemplating the remarkable transformation he had personally witnessed. Initially harboring considerable skepticism regarding the utility of what he considered outdated equipment, his perspective had undergone a profound metamorphosis, leading him to become one of the M1917A1 machine gun's most ardent proponents within the Marine Corps. This venerable weapon had, through the brutal crucible of sustained combat, unequivocally transitioned from a perceived encumbrance to an indispensable asset. Its inherent limitations, once viewed as drawbacks, ultimately revealed themselves as significant strengths when its capabilities were thoroughly comprehended and judiciously applied. For instance, the very substantial weight that rendered the M1917A1 cumbersome to reposition on the battlefield simultaneously provided the crucial thermal mass essential for its unparalleled, sustained cooling capacity. Similarly, the intricate design that necessitated more meticulous maintenance procedures was precisely what afforded it a level of operational reliability that simpler, less sophisticated systems simply could not replicate. Beyond its tangible physical effects, the weapon's psychological impact on the enemy during the protracted, harrowing engagements on Okinawa proved equally, if not more, significant. Japanese defenders quickly learned to discern the M1917A1's characteristic, rhythmic firing signature from the cacophony of other American armaments, instinctively recognizing its distinct sound as a harbinger of certain death for any movement detected within its lethal beaten zone. The machine gun's extraordinary capability to maintain a continuous stream of fire for hours without interruption compelled enemy units to retreat deeper into their subterranean fortifications, severely impeding their capacity to coordinate defensive maneuvers or mount effective counterattacks. More profoundly, the M19-120AA1's unexpected triumph fundamentally reshaped the strategic approach American forces adopted for conducting sustained combat operations. This formidable weapon unequivocally demonstrated that the sheer sustainability of firepower held greater strategic importance than momentary peak performance during protracted engagements. It underscored that effective thermal management was just as critically vital as a consistent ammunition supply. And perhaps most importantly, that prevailing environmental factors could decisively override theoretical advantages touted in laboratory conditions. These invaluable lessons gleaned from the M1917A1's combat performance possessed far-reaching implications, extending well beyond the specific domain of machine gun employment, and began influencing a broad spectrum of military thought, from the refinement of artillery doctrine to novel considerations in aircraft engine design. The surge of technical innovations, directly sparked by the weapon's unexpected renaissance, continued to evolve and improve throughout the exhaustive Pacific Campaign. Dedicated ordnance specialists successfully engineered and implemented advanced water circulation systems, which remarkably boosted cooling efficiency by an impressive 15%, thereby enabling even higher rates of sustained fire without the risk of debilitating overheating. Concurrently, ammunition feeding mechanisms underwent significant refinement to adeptly handle longer belt lengths, a crucial improvement that substantially reduced the frequency of reloads during the most critical phases of engagement. Furthermore, optical sights received vital upgrades, allowing forces to fully capitalize on the weapon's inherent accuracy at greatly extended ranges. Yet the most pivotal transformations were predominantly tactical rather than purely technical. Marine Corps doctrine now explicitly recognized the M19-117A1 not as a generic, all-purpose weapon striving to fulfill every role, but rather as a highly specialized instrument meticulously optimized for particular missions. Its acknowledged specialties unequivocally became fixed defensive positions, the provision of sustained suppressive fire, and precision engagement at considerable distances. We sincerely hope you are finding this historical analysis insightful. Please stay with us and watch the end of the video for more fascinating details. We would be incredibly grateful for your like and subscription. Please also consider leaving a comment below about where you are from and what you think about this compelling topic of military innovation and adaptation. This newfound tactical clarity effectively dissipated much of the initial perplexity and operational confusion that had previously hampered the weapon's effective employment. However, the human toll exacted by this arduous education was immense and tragic. Valiant veterans, such as the legendary Basilone, tragically paid the ultimate price with their very lives, their sacrifices directly contributing to the hard-won expertise that ultimately rendered effective deployment possible. Countless machine gun crews, operating under unimaginable pressure, acquired their invaluable knowledge through a brutal process of trial and error. Their mistakes tragically measured in human casualties rather than mere training scores. This profound body of operational wisdom, purchased with the profound cost of blood and rigorously validated through the stark reality of survival on the battlefield, forged a tactical understanding that no amount of peacetime exercises or theoretical drills could ever have generated. Smith's meticulously detailed after-action reports submitted from Okinawa were destined to become the foundational cornerstone for post-war machine gun doctrine, systematically codifying the invaluable lessons painstakingly acquired through 3 grueling years of combat across the vast Pacific theater. His incisive analysis placed particular emphasis on critical environmental factors that had been largely overlooked or outright ignored in pre-war strategic planning. These included detailed observations on how high humidity adversely affected cooling efficiency, the fundamental differences between the requirements for sustained fire versus burst fire capabilities, and the precise manner in which thermal limitations could inadvertently create tactical vulnerabilities that astute enemies were quick to exploit. This seminal document would exert a profound and lasting influence on American small arms development for many decades to come. The broader implications of the M19-117A1's journey extended far beyond individual weapon systems, touching upon fundamental questions regarding military innovation and the process of technology adoption. The M19-117A1's remarkable success unequivocally demonstrated that newer technology was not inherently or automatically superior, that the often brutal realities of battlefield requirements frequently diverged significantly from idealized laboratory specifications, and that the invaluable practical experience of combat veterans provided profound insights that theoretical analysis alone could never replicate. These pivotal lessons would fundamentally reshape how the military critically evaluated new equipment, shifting the emphasis decisively towards proven performance in real-world scenarios over mere promised capabilities. As the devastating Pacific War inexorably approached its conclusion, the M1977A1 found itself occupying a truly unique and rather ironic position, an ostensibly obsolete weapon that had, against all odds, proven demonstrably superior to its more modern replacements under specific demanding combat conditions. The specialized tactical niche it had painstakingly carved out during the brutal jungle fighting of Guadalcanal had progressively expanded throughout the entire island-hopping campaign, consistently providing essential capabilities that lighter, more contemporary weapons simply could not match, particularly when missions unequivocally demanded sustained firepower over extended operational periods. The weapon's profound influence on post-war military planning was already becoming strikingly apparent as strategic planners diligently prepared for potential future conflicts in other challenging tropical environments. While Korea's rugged mountainous terrain and unforgiving harsh winters would undoubtedly present a distinct set of challenges, the invaluable lessons concerning environmental factors and sustained operations so painfully learned in the Pacific would prove surprisingly relevant in unforeseen ways. The M1917A1's unlikely renaissance had firmly established enduring principles that transcended the specific characteristics of any single weapon system. The ultimate irony, perhaps the most profound of all, lay in the vindication of John Moses Browning's original design philosophy. His unwavering emphasis on reliability and sustainability over theoretical performance had proven far more pertinent and critical in 1945 than it had been in 1917 when the gun was initially conceived and produced. The intervening decades had, regrettably, led the military to increasingly value complexity and perceived sophistication. But the unforgiving crucible of combat had starkly revealed the enduring and paramount importance of fundamental engineering principles that unyieldingly prioritized function over fleeting fashion. Smith's poignant final entry in his personal operational log eloquently encapsulated the profound essence of what the M1917A1 had imparted to him personally and to the Marine Corps collectively. The weapon's ultimate success stemmed not from its ability to be the best at every conceivable task, but rather from its unique and unparalleled suitability for a specific set of missions that proved absolutely critical to achieving victory. Its remarkable renaissance unequivocally demonstrated that genuine military effectiveness derived from meticulously matching the appropriate tools to the specific tasks at hand, rather than blindly assuming that newer technology would automatically yield superior results. This fundamental lesson extended far beyond the confines of machine guns, encompassing the entire intricate relationship between technological advancement and tactical deployment in the complex landscape of modern warfare. The M1917A1's ultimate vindication powerfully illustrated that combat would perpetually serve as the final, uncompromising arbiter of military effectiveness, that the unforgiving demands of the battlefield frequently contradicted complacent peacetime assumptions, and that the most impactful innovations sometimes involved the sagacious rediscovery of proven, older solutions rather than the relentless pursuit of entirely novel ones. In a global conflict largely defined by rapid and unprecedented technological advancement, an ostensibly obsolete weapon had, paradoxically, imparted the most modern and timeless lesson of all, that enduring success stemmed from a profound understanding of what demonstrably worked, rather than merely what theoretically should work.